Parents of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing your kids has ever said or done? I overheard a girl tell her mom, "Her eyes are pretty," referring to the new daycare employee. "I want to wear them on my charm bracelet." My cousin, who is 3, he keeps referring to any woman he sees as tasty. We would be watching a movie and he would point out a woman and says, "She is tasty." What he means is that she is beautiful. I can't even walk with him outside because I am afraid he might point out to some woman and say that she is tasty. I was napping on the couch and my then 3-year-old was standing there with a toy. Felt saw. I woke up to him saying, "I'm going to saw mommy's head off." Nope. On a long drive through central, western Pennsylvania. All farms and hills are forests and low mountains. My 5-yo out of nowhere says, "This will look really cool as a wasteland. You know, after everyone dies," as much as we asked. He didn't elaborate on that. Headed 1. It was between Williamsport and Wellsboro on RT-15 when he said it too. The H was from another sentence that was accidentally deleted. He caught us off guard because the car was dead quiet between songs and we thought he was on his tablet. It really creeped us out. Alone with my 4-year-old Midwestern daughter, when she randomly whispers, "Oh, she's here," while staring out a dark window, and #X200B. Edit. For people wondering, when said correctly, it rhymes with nope, dope, rope, and don't forget Pope. My 4-year-old likes to play this make-believe game where she is having a baby and needs it cut out of her. We have never explained to her what a C-section is. Then the baby always has some sort of deformity, like no eyes or arms or something, and she needs to try again to have a better baby, and she is just going to throw the bad one out. My wife and I have refused to play this game with her once we noticed the pattern. But now she is drafting her younger sister into it and they love it. I'm torn between making them stop or just being happy they're playing so nicely together. Edit. After seeing some comments, I will add that my wife and I do not let our kids watch YouTube unattended. We have discussed this weird game with our daughter and do monitor it. But overall, it just seems harmless despite its creepiness. My niece and nephew were 13 and 15 at the time and we were watching them for my brother-in-law while he was out of town. At about 3 a.m. I get shaken and awake to 2 visibly upset teens who start sobbing about a dead woman trying to get in my niece's bedroom window. This jolts my husband out of bed in a hurry. He grabs his handgun and tells me to stay with the kids. They live in a mobile home that sits on risers, so this window is roughly 9 feet at its base. He goes down the hallway and I hear him shout, "What the fuck?" and run back to the front door and outside. Now the niece and nephew are losing their minds, not wanting their uncle getting hurt, so I call the cops and walk to the door to see what's going on. The dead woman was in fact a woman hopped out of her mind on who knows what, naked, and she did very much look like a corpse. She had been standing on the roof of my truck, trying to see in the windows. So, my son and I stood watching his then 2-year-old daughter as she stood looking, laughing, and chatting away in toddler gibberish at nothing, in a completely empty hallway. We just watched her and looked at each other with a WTF look on our faces. Same granddaughter. Some years later, still sleeps with me when she visits because that girl scares her. That's all she'll say because evidently the girl told her not to tell anyone about her. When we first moved into our new house, our 4-year-old refused to go upstairs. When asked why, he replied, "I don't want the things upstairs to defeat me." I get it, little man. I don't want the things upstairs to defeat me either. My husband is a farmer. One night he asked me to pick him up after working ground and it was pretty late, around 10 o'clock. So I loaded our 2 girls up, then 4 and 2, and headed to the field. We get to the field and C is finishing up his last round, so we had to wait for a minute. I rolled the windows down in the van and shut the engine off. After a few minutes my 2-year-old says, "Mommy, "Who dat man outside?" I said. "I don't see a man." "Is your Ken doll on the floor?" My 4-year-old then piped up. "He's right outside your door and staring at you. He's scary. He has blood on his face." That's when I turned the key, rolled the windows up, locked the doors, and called my husband and told him to hurry the hell up because the girls are terrified and there's apparently a scary man outside my door that I can't see, but both girls are describing him and what he's doing. Thankfully C was done and heading up to the van at that moment, and we left. My girls are now 5 and 7 and they both still remember that man and refuse to go to that particular field. I have to ask my mill to watch them when I need to pick their daddy up from there. I posted this before my 4-year-old son had a habit of announcing when he had to use the bathroom. "Monsieur," he would say, "I gotta go potty." One time he makes his business known and heads off toward the bathroom. "Monsieur," he returns seconds later and says, "There's already someone in the bathroom." Now I do know for a fact that it's just the two of us home, so the hair stands up on my neck. I ask him, "What do you mean?" He repeats, "There's already someone in the bathroom." Now I'm thinking, is it someone I see dead people, or someone in a hockey goalie mask? So I grab the biggest knife from my knife block and tell him to stay here. I walk to the bathroom, take a wide angle to see in. Nobody. Slowly and quietly walk toward the shower and pull back the curtain. Nothing. By now my son has walked around the corner and I ask them, "Where did you see the person?" Quote, he points to an unflushed toilet and says, "See, someone's already here." His big brother didn't flush the toilet. Both of my children, when they were babies, would point to empty corners of the room as if someone were there. Not a parent, but a good story about my sister. She was about 3 years old and we were getting ready to go to our uncle's house for dinner. She was being really fussy and didn't want to get changed, so my dad asks her, "Don't you want to go to Uncle Dan's house?" Quote, she then responded saying, "No. I don't like the man in the ceiling." Though it was an odd thing to say, but didn't give much thought. A few years later, we were helping my uncle sell the house and it came out that someone had killed themselves in the attic back in the 90s. I looked at the video monitor to make sure my 2-year-old daughter was finally asleep since she hadn't made noise in a while. I see her standing up in her crib. She slowly bends over to the side, cocks her head towards her knee, and says, "Hi." How did she know I was looking at the monitor at that exact moment? Plus, the way she was bent at the waist looked humanly impossible, and the night vision function made her eyes look so creepy. My 4-year-old talks about death a lot. Dead pets, dead family members, weird, but whatever. The one that freaks me out is when she mentions my dead grandma that got shot. We never talk about my husband's mom, who took her own life when my husband was a teenager. I'm a skeptic when it comes to the supernatural, but it makes me wonder. My 3-year-old, while eating dinner, told me there was a man on the balcony with red eyes with his mouth gaping open, like a scream face. We live on the 3rd floor and the only access to that balcony is from inside. Needless to say, I didn't turn around. He said so much weird things. We live in a really old apartment, and I don't believe in ghosts, but he creeps me out. Edit. He's also mentioned a little boy upside down scratching at the ceiling, just casually, like it was nothing. On the meantime, I am garbage-eating myself. My oldest daughter usually stands beside my bed at night. When she was 5, she already had long black hair. The creepy part was that she just stood there, not even tried to wake me or my wife up. She were just standing there for 2 or 3 hours watching us. When she finished looking at us, she'd go back to her bed and sleep like nothing happens. That was a really creepy time of my life. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night cause of an urgent need to pee and looking directly at her eyes and the child. But my mom told me when I was about 3, I told her very calmly that the voices in my head are telling me to kill myself. I still don't really believe her, but that's not really something she'd lie about. Haven't heard voices since, so maybe they killed themselves. Back in the mid-60s, my cousin's family lived out near the ocean on the coast of Japan. It wasn't so built up back then, and they lived near a rocky cliff where a small lighthouse sat. My cousin was maybe 8 at the time, but he was sort of obsessed with turtles. He had a pet turtle with an odd name, and he took very good care of it, to the point where he didn't have much of a social life. It was a wild turtle he'd caught, and since he was missing out on socializing anyway, his parents eventually convinced him to let the turtle go. He let it go in a small pond nearby, but he'd go out to talk to it every day anyway. One day there was a big downburst coming up from the sea. It came out of nowhere and was absolutely ferocious. My cousin was caught out in the open and ran to the lighthouse for protection. The storm passed in a few minutes, but the sea was so ferocious that the lighthouse crumbled under the waves. My cousin was found, slightly dazed but unharmed, sitting a few hundred yards from the rubble anyway. My cousin doesn't remember this today, but his parents told me that he wouldn't shut up about how his turtle had turned giant, come out of the sea, and caught him before flying away. His English wasn't the best, but he just kept repeating the same thing. Gamera is friend to children. Quote,